Good morning, good day, or good evening. My name is Eli Rowe, and this is the Middle-Aged Witch Podcast. Hello, and thank you so much for being here with me today. We are going to talk today about the concept of the divine feminine. And this is one of those things that has kind of become a buzzword in witchcraft. Kind of like, shadow work or, the Akashic records or whatever. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but it isn't something that gets dissected too often. And this is not a concept that gets broken down to its basic elements much. And that is a shame because it matters. So thank you to Danny for suggesting this topic. In fact, all of the topics that we are going to talk about this month. Got a little bit of a theme going on for July. So, the divine feminine is a spiritual concept, and it acknowledges a counterpart to the patriarchal and masculine structures that exist and which are arguably overemphasized within organized religions. And this concept extends beyond any single belief system, and we use it as a way to balance our perspective, rather than a simple binary of men versus women. It recognizes the complementary energies within each of us. And these energies can be symbolized by various figures and symbols. And in older polytheistic religions, goddesses were extensively worshipped. And they continue to hold a lot of significance through modern day, and especially in like Hinduism, Tantric Buddhism, Tantric Hinduism, and of course paganism. So this whole month of July, we're going to explore all of these concepts. So today we are going to talk about the concept of the divine feminine. Next week we will talk about the divine masculine. Yes, it's a thing, it's real, it's important. And then the following week, we will talk about the dark feminine archetype. And then the last week of July, we are going to talk about Lilith, who, to my mind, really embodies all of these concepts so beautifully. And my hope is that all of this information will blend into a cohesive understanding of what these terms mean to us as witches, and how we can use that understanding to support our craft and to build our knowledge base, because knowledge is power. We are also going to talk today about how we can pay tribute to the divine feminine archetype, or even to specific deities that align with these attributes. So, let's get into it. Now, some of the earliest evidence of goddess worship comes to us from the Upper Paleolithic sites in Europe and in Northern Asia. There were sculpted images and cave paintings, and they depicted female figures, often referred to as Venuses. Love that for her. And what I find interesting is that these figurines, which would have been carved from bone or stone, antler, wood, mammoth tusks even, they outnumber male figures like 10 to 1. These figurines were important to these ancients. And of course, I will link sources for all this information. And I will put those links in the episode description, and of course in the written transcript of this episode that can be found on the website, middleagedwitch.com. But back to these figurines, these idols. While a popular interpretation of these figures is as, fertility symbol, it's more likely that their meanings varied across different cultural contexts. For example, some Native American cultures revered the Earth Mother as it was linked to corn cultivation. And in this concept of the goddess as the Great Mother, where we use the term goddess as a general sort of blanket term to encompass all of her iterations, the divine feminine embodied nurturing and creation and fertility. Ancient societies associated the goddess with life-giving forces, which were frequently depicted as the Great Mother. And offerings and sacrifices were made to ensure community well-being and, bountiful harvests and healthy and safe births, and so on. Archaeological discoveries hint at an era when the goddess was the primary deity, the source of all life. And while it is admittedly sketchy, evidence does suggest that widespread goddess worship across ancient times did in fact exist. So, in summary, goddess worship transcended cultures, symbolizing fertility and protection and wisdom. For so many of these ancients, the role that women played in the observation of religious rites and sites was, crucial. In modern times, of course, we have seen the role of women in the church diminished to the point of being essentially non-existent. But that was not always the case. In ancient Egypt, for example, priestesses played crucial roles in temple worship and religious practices, including as caretakers of temple deities. The primary responsibility was to care for the deities in the temple, and thus ensuring, their well-being and maintaining those sacred spaces. Priestesses often conducted rituals, and this would involve offerings and sacrifices to honor the deities and to seek their favor. Priestesses led processions, they offered prayers, they lit fires on altars, poured libations, they adorned statues, and they even prepared sacrificial animals for slaughter. And within the sacred precincts of Greece, priestesses carried the keys to the temples, and they tended to the idols. They would wash them and dress them as custom dictated, according to ancient Greek religious doctrine. Priestesses were integral to religious life. They ensured the divine connection and maintaining those sacred spaces that were so important. The important thing to remember when we talk about honoring the divine feminine or embodying the divine feminine, or, just getting in touch with our own divine feminine aspects, because we all have them, even if we are men, because none of us is only one thing. We are talking about leaning into facets of our personalities that include nurturing, understanding, empathy, interpersonal connection. This energy complements, is not subordinate to, it is equal to, it complements the long-valued masculine energy by creating balance and emphasizing sensuality and softness and inner creativity and compassion and courage. It is connected to fertility and birth and the cyclical nature of life, and it influences transformation, not just within ourselves, but within our families and to further within our communities. Connecting with and understanding our divine feminine energy involves embracing these qualities that are associated with the feminine archetype. And there are some practices that can help us connect. So, we've got to prioritize self-care, and we've got to nurture ourselves. That's first. We have to listen to our bodies. We have to rest. We have to engage in activities that replenish our energy rather than to constantly drain it. In essence, we have to be the mother to ourselves that we deserve. Another thing that we can do to step into our divine feminine is to trust our intuition. Pay attention to our inner voice, to our dreams, to our subtle feelings and our knowledge that we have, but we don't know why we have it or how we have it. We have to learn to trust that. And meditation and mindfulness can really help to enhance this connection. We need to engage in creative pursuits. And that can be different things for everyone, whether it's art or writing or dancing. Creativity allows us to express openly and publicly, externally express our feminine essence. We've got to spend time in nature. Connecting with the cycles of the moon and seasons and natural elements, because they mirror the ebb and the flow of feminine energy. Because feminine energy is not constant, and we need to understand and honor that. Emotional expression. We have got to allow ourselves to feel deeply. Don't stifle it or downplay it or be ashamed of it or pretend that it isn't important or that it doesn't matter. We have to embrace and celebrate vulnerability and compassion and empathy. And journaling in particular can really help us to explore emotions. I know I'm constantly beating that drum, but journaling or writing things down, so important. Surrounding ourselves with sacred feminine symbols. This one is a little bit out there, but I believe in it. So to explore symbols like the moon, water, different flowers, goddess figurines, using them as reminders of our connection to the divine feminine. And this is a personal journey, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach. We can take what we like, we can leave the rest, we can find something altogether different than anything that we've spoken about already. We just have to trust our instincts and explore what resonates with us. We can also set up an altar for this purpose if it's something that we are working on for ourselves, or if we just want to honor these aspects within ourselves, or, if we want to honor a specific goddess that we feel embodies these attributes. And we have talked about setting up altars before. I will link to that episode, so I won't go all the way down that rabbit hole, but just for a little refresh, we will go through the process really quickly. So, 1, setting up the altar. Find a sacred space, indoors or outdoors, that is conducive to worship. So if we're indoors, we need to find a calm, undisturbed location that isn't going to be, messed with by like little ones or dogs or cats. Ideally, it's not always foolproof, but we do what we can. But if we're outdoors, we want to look for a spot that's quiet, that's contemplative. If we can, it would be great to find a spot that's near water, like, the beach or a river or just a creek in the backyard. But a serene garden, something like that would be ideal. And then for altar setup, we just need a flat surface. So, a table or a shelf to act as our base. We're going to cover it with a cloth. If we've got a cloth that happens to be in colors that we associate with the divine feminine, maybe pink or red, or even seafoam green if we're honoring Aphrodite. And then, place things like candles or incense or calming items around the altar, whatever speaks to us, whatever asks us to be included on the altar space. And then just cleanse that altar with smoke from incense or, with water to sanctify it or consecrate it for its divine purpose. And then we want to place offerings on this altar. And because traditional offerings, they show devotion, they deepen the connection, they act as a physical and visible reminder of what it is that we are trying to accomplish by creating this sacred space. So consider, flowers or seashells, again, for Aphrodite, candles, small cakes, wine, water, bread, pomegranates if you're inviting Persephone to join the party, or just symbols of love and, fertility or peace, divination or beauty. And then finally, I did want to include the idea of a blood sacrifice. Bear with me. While this is not universal, some goddess worship traditions do involve blood sacrifice, and this practice is found in various religious contexts, not limited only to female deities, but simply putting a small amount of blood on our altar that has been safely drawn is a really powerful tribute. it definitely leans into the dark feminine aspect, which we will be talking more about later this month, and I am excited for that conversation. But take it or leave it, just as a thought, I like the idea of a blood offering on an altar that is meant to honor the divine feminine. But, we just have to remember our rituals are ours, and they can be as simple or as elaborate as we'd like them to be, as long as they reflect our personal connection to the divine feminine. And I think the reason that I really was excited to get into this topic so deeply is because there is a tendency sometimes to diminish what it means to be feminine. It's often seen as a weakness or limitation or something to be avoided or minimized as much as possible, and that's such an ass-backwards way of thinking. We cannot lean too heavily on the masculine aspects of ourselves and ignore or trivialize the feminine aspects. The feminine is not lesser. We crave balance in witchcraft. We understand that balance is literally divine. One cannot exist in its perfect, pure form without the other. And to treat one as positive and desirable and the other as negative or unwanted is to ignore what makes us divine beings in the first place. So, thank you very much for indulging me today. I do hope you come back next week, and until then, have a lovely day. My name is Eli Rowe, and this has been the Middle-Aged Witch Podcast. May our troubles be less and our blessings be more, and nothing but happiness come through our door. The information presented is the author's opinion and does not constitute any health or medical advice. The content of this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any condition or disease. Please seek advice from your healthcare provider for your personal health concerns.